In today's video we have loads of things going right here on the table. And we have another product from GrauGear. This is the USB Type-C M.2 NVMe SSD housing that can be used, and that is basically used for an external M.2 SSD storage. So it's quite cool to have such a thing, and it does look really nice, somewhat an industrial look, especially with the passive heatsink sticking out such as this with these fins, and it's a cooling part. This is the passive heatsink right here. We have USB Type-C connection, we have two cables, we have a nice bag that comes with it, two Velcro ties, even though I'm not quite sure what they're going to be used for. Maybe eventually if you remove these ties you can use the Velcro ties, but that's all up to you to decide how and where are you going to use those Velcro ties. We have the instruction manual, we have 2 for 5 thermal pads. We have two additional rubber standoffs that keep the SSD firmly on the placement. So this is if the SSD is any other than the 2280 size. And for this test, for this benchmark and review, we're going to use the Kingston KC3000, which is Gen 4x4 and can reach really high speeds. So quite curious how it will perform, of course. And now I'm going to do two benchmarks actually. Going to plug it in from Type-C to Type-C, from Type-C to Type-A, and we're going to check it out to see the speeds which are faster. And of course I'm going to use the Kingston workflow station for one benchmarks, and directly to your motherboard for another benchmark and other results. The main features of the GrauGear M.2 external housing, USB Type-C external housing, is it supports PCIe 3.0 x 2 transfer speeds up to 10 gigabits per second with USB 3.2 generation 2. It supports SATA transfer speeds up to 6 gigabits per second with USB 3.2 generation 1. Premium aluminum heatsink with excellent cooling effort. We'll see about that, of course. And supports PCIe NVMe M.2 SSD of M key and SATA 3 NGFF SSD of B key and M plus B key. Compatible with, as already stated, well, basically indirectly I stated, 2280, and for the 2260, 2242 and 2230 you need to use these rubber standoffs to keep the SSD stable in the housing. It has M.2 SSD holder storage design as a protection box, so there's another feature for it. Then we have tool-free installation in seconds, which you'll see, and supports Windows and Mac OS. The controller is RTL9210B. Let me first go and show you how to mount the SSD. First you need to push and open the lock. Open the top cover, because pushing the lock actually releases the top cover. Insert your M.2, push the M.2 down and fixated it on the plastic hinge, so you don't need to use for the 2280. Basically for the KC3000 you don't have to use the rubber extenders or holders or whatever. Place the silicone thermal pad on the M.2. Close the top cover and installation is complete after you lock it with the locks on the side. If you decide to go with 2230, 2242 and 2260, you need to push the silicone fixture down until the fixture fits through the hole. Basically, if you go with the shorter ones, you do need to you have two of those. And the cool thing is, at the back you have a possibility to place another M.2 SSD, but not for transfer. Basically it's just for protection. So in that terms you can open the back cover and use the space at the back to protect one M.2 SSD. Now this is really cool. If you're on the go and if you really, I don't know, into photography, videography on the go, and you do need something to have to store your recordings or anything similar to that. I don't know, you have a smaller laptop to carry around but it has 256 gigs, or you're just not into that area where you have a good Wi-Fi to store your data in the cloud. You can grab two of these, 1-2 terabytes, store one at the back just for safekeeping and the other one on the front, and transfer everything to your laptop to the SSD. When you fill up one, you just swap them and that's it. You're good to go. I'm going to use, I think this one is 1 millimeter. So let's check it out. It should fit perfectly. Placing it on the top and removing the plastic foil, closing the hatch and locking it at the back. That's it. This is all we had to do to place the M.2 2280 inside the GrauGear M.2 Type-C external enclosure. So first of all, going to use the Type-C to Type-C and going to use it on the workflow station. Now here are the results. USB-C to USB-C on the Kingston workflow station. Read is 440 megabytes per second, while the write is 430 megabytes per second. Around, you'll see everything in the graphs. Terminals, unfortunately, on the Type-C cable, it didn't recognize terminals in AIDA64, but Type-C to Type-C on the X299 we have 1.01 gigabit per second, while the write is also 1.1 gigabit per second. It goes maximum directly on the motherboard, and terminals went up to 39 degrees Celsius. Type-C to Type-A on Kingston workflow, 443-ish megabytes per second, while the write is 432.8 megabytes per second, and terminals 35. That's good. And Type-C to Type-A directly on the motherboard, the X299, we have read 436. This SSD usually doesn't overheat just because it already has a passive heatsink on it. Unfortunately, I don't have any M.2 SSD that doesn't have at least the slim copper or aluminium on it placed for better heat dissipation. But I think without the passive heatsink on the motherboard and without anything basically on it, just a naked SSD on the motherboard, it would reach 45 to 50, something around that. So this one does work great. I just need to find a M.2 SSD that actually doesn't have anything on it, just chips and that's it, so I could test it out and see the actual drop. Just like we did with the PCI Express card from GrauGear, which actually lowered the temperature for 20 degrees, which was outstanding. But that M.2 SSD didn't have anything on it. So no aluminum, no copper, small thin heatsink to dissipate the heat from the chips. It's very compact. You get an additional bag. You get 2 different cables depending on your laptop or your computer. You get 5 thermal pads, different thickness depending if the M.2 SSD is, well, double-sided, it doesn't matter because the height is always the same. But nevertheless, you get this cool external USB Type-C enclosure, and really cool that you could actually at the back store another M.2 NVMe SSD to, I don't know, have additional storage if you're on the go. So this is a nice solution. And I would say, I think PC Crazy approved badge for this one, without a doubt. The links are in the description below so you can check out the price, and I think you'll find it quite affordable for what you're getting. Yeah. So guys, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell for future content, and hopefully I will see you all next time in a new video. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.